Welcome to Speak Sex. I am your host, Eurydice. I am a Greek from the island of Lesbos, where the lesbians come from. I'm a writer on female sexuality, and I have started this podcast pretty much since the advent of the Me Too movement, in my own quest to understand and then help everyone else understand the change in our definitions of our sexual boundaries, our sexual mores, our ways of relating to each other intimately, and ultimately finding a methodology to bridge the split between body and mind that we inherited from, unfortunately, from our religion and our system and our patriarchy, so we can live more unified and happy lives together instead of apart, trying to meet somewhere in the middle. So looking for like non-binary ways of living and being together, especially for women, who I think can win our genetic advantage back through intimacy and sex. That's where we're stronger. So today's guests work in this field, and I'm very happy to have them with us. They are a couple, Michelle and Arnie Roza. They are dating relationship coaches here in Miami. They have been supporting singles and couples, helping them navigate the world of intimate relationships, romantic relationships, dating, so that they can experience empowerment and fulfillment in romance. They are both certified in the biological differences between men and women and how that affects couple interactions. So they'll tell us a lot about that, because this is the first time I have a show on this topic. So I'm super interested. The only thing I know is like that best-selling book, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, right? That's where it ended, my knowledge. So, they're both young and beautiful, and I want to hear their stories. So thank you for coming, Michelle and Arnie. Michelle also founded and runs a company for relationships between women.
Helping women who are in relationships that aren't in a fulfilling relationship discover why that is. And what we have found, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is when we can understand the differences between men and women and embrace them rather than criticize them or judge them or even resist them, we can create those kinds of amazing relationships we've always wanted. And it's not hard work, but it does take work.
It takes work, for sure. Yeah. But it also takes education, yes, which we don't get in school, or we don't get in our youth, we don't get from our parents. Right. We should, I think, right? Mm-hmm. I think that, people like you, one of your tasks, communal tasks, is to spread the word that they should start at an earlier stage, right? Yes. That there should be better sex ed in like elementary school or at home, where kids have these tools instead of, having to like unlearn as adults what they thought they took for granted without really talking about it, and then relearn it, right? With, and that's when they need to go to relationship coaches, sex coaches, classes, all that.
Yeah, it's it's so interesting, because so many times we're at the mercy of our past.
Right.
Whatever happened, if you grew up in a household where there was respect and there was love and there was affinity, then you're more likely to have that. Now, if you grew up in a household where that wasn't there, then you think that's how relationships are. It's kind of like raising kids. Nobody brings a manual, and it's one of the most important jobs in the world, right? So a lot of times people do, and then the other thing is that people think, certainly in our experience, when we talk to couples, they think that they should already know. Like it should come natural, right? And so if you've had that kind of past, or you've had the experience, or you have high emotional intelligence for whatever reason, then you're more likely to succeed. And if you don't, sometimes not even as a fault of yours, then when you don't have that kind of emotional intelligence, then you're just left at the mercy of your feelings or reactions or whatever that looks like. And to your point, yes, then that's where education really does matter, and you can make a difference and turn things around and have relationships that work. But you gotta know, right? You gotta learn the skills.
Yeah, and become conscious both of what you saw at home, which is not yours necessarily, but you've absorbed it.
That's right.
And conscious of what you believe in, because we we don't really know until we have an opportunity to verbalize it. One of the things that I try to discuss in the program is that sexuality is not morality. That our morality is not determined but by what we do in bed with our partner at all. Morality is how we deal with each other in the outside world. But once we have a consensual relationship, our sexuality, for example, someone is gay or someone, whatever they are, has nothing to do with our morality. We shouldn't be judged on that. We should be judged on our moral actions. Right. So people confuse that so much because they don't think about it.
Yeah, certainly sexuality, you can't get more basic than your needs. Sexual, whatever rocks your boat or whatever that is, right?
Right.
You can't get more basic than human beings for that. And that's, I think, why you have so much of the tension and dichotomy between the moral aspect of it and then what you like and what gives you pleasure and what you don't like and all that, right? So as long as they're consenting adults.
Right.
Then there's the other.
Right. But then, everything should go. Anyway, okay. So backtracking. I'd like to hear your story from each one of you, and then your story of getting together and doing this, becoming experts.
So for me, my stories, I won't start from the very, very beginning, but I'll tell you as a child, from the age of 3 years old, experienced the first disappointment in love, right? Because my father died.
Oh.
I was very little. I didn't understand. All I understood was daddy's gone to heaven with the angels and you have to be a good girl. And that was the first time in my life where I can recall that I started realizing there's something wrong. And fast forward, my mother ended up falling in love again. We moved to Miami. We were in New York with my dad. She fell in love with my stepfather. They had my younger sister. And that relationship was a very, there was a lot of arguing. There was a lot of screaming. I remember that. And that's how I learned you communicate through fighting, through screaming. The louder you are, the better your point gets across. And then everything is calm. So going back to what you were talking about. And then that marriage ended. And at the time, we didn't...
How old were you then?
About 12 years old, 13. Very formative years,
yeah.
All of those years. So then when my mother got divorced, she very quickly got into another relationship. And at that time, we weren't aware of it. Now we're very aware of it, that she's diagnosed bipolar manic depressive. And she started drinking as a way to medicate.
Yeah, self-medicate.
Right? Mm-hmm. We didn't know it at the time, but a very... what seemed like a somewhat normal life, because even though she argued a lot with my first stepfather, he always treated us like we were his girls, and there was abundance of everything. And then this whole shift in our life happened, and unfortunately this man was also an alcoholic, used to beat her, and so now there's this new experience in relationship. They're violent, it's scary, be careful what you say, what you do, all of that. So we eventually had to leave our homes, and I went to live with my uncle, my aunt, and my twin sister. My younger sister went to live with my first stepfather. And at 17, I got pregnant. And I got pregnant, and we got married.
Wait. You got pregnant by your high school sweetheart?
My high school sweetheart, yes. I got pregnant with my high school sweetheart, and we got married. We loved each
you
other.
Got married, okay.
We loved
So
each
you
other.
were married at what, 18 or?
At 17.
17?
I had to get the papers signed by my uncle, my aunt. Yeah, it was.
That's when you lived with your uncle where this happened.
Yes. And so we had our first child, and we were kids.
Having kids,
pretending to be adults, and all the skills that we had, going back to your first point, were what we observed. That's what we had, and we were repeating that, and that didn't work then, and it wasn't working here either.
Yeah.
And I took on really being the man in the relationship, and I can see that now. I couldn't see it then, but he had issues with keeping a job, so I had 3. And then we had our second child, and I'm working 3 jobs, and he's in and out of work. And it started to create in me a lot of resentment, a lot of disrespect. The way I treated him was disrespectful. The way he treated me was disrespectful. It was not a happy relationship. And 12 and a half years into it, he had an affair, and that was the end of that. That's when I finally got the courage, because my self-esteem was so low. That was the point that I said, okay, this is my way out of this. And
12 and a half years is a very long time.
Long time.
Especially because you're still growing up, you know. I mean, you grow up until you're like in your mid-20s. So in the midst of raising children, and you're already so wounded.
Yes. And then I come out, you know, single mom now, raising 2 kids, into a world where this thing called online dating had manifested while I was, you know, putting diapers on kids. And I'm like, what is this? Very excited, very hopeful for something different. But that wasn't the case. It wasn't the case. I met some nice guys, and I met some guys that weren't so nice and some I should have never been with. And I kept experiencing the same thing over and over again. And what I was experiencing was attracting men that were not interested in being in committed relationships. I was attracting men that had some sort of drama going on in their life, right? This whole thing of drama followed me into these relationships, and several of them, the majority of them I would say that I was dating, had some kind of addiction, whether it was too much alcohol or some other type of drug, you know, pot, pills, whatever. And I was so
it was like a codependent situation that you were perpetuating.
Totally. And it was my past being repeated. Here we are again, right?
Yeah. And you're going to enable anybody.
and they were all so that's what they had in common. The third thing a lot of them had in common, they were either in the end of a relationship, recently divorced, or just out of a breakup. All of them.
Wow.
That they all had in common. So there was something there as well. And 5 years into that experience, I was just like devastated and completely disillusioned. And I remember thinking, what is wrong with me? I can create success in my business,
work,
with my kids. I have these great friends and family, this amazing life. And in this area of love, I'm failing, and I'm failing hard. And had a conversation with a coach that I was working with at the time. And he asked me, you know, what do all those men have in common? And I said, well, they're men, you know, with an attitude. And he said, well, what else other than biology? And without even thinking, without a second's hesitation, I said, well, they're liars, they're cheaters, and they don't know what they want. Just like that. Like. And then he said, well, what else? And I said, well, and I shared some of the commonalities they had. And he kept asking me what else. And at some point, he asked me what else. And I'm like, I don't know, what do you see that I don't see? He said, you are the common denominator. These people don't even know each other. And so I asked him, well, what's wrong with me then, that I keep attracting this kind of guy? And he said, that's the wrong question. There's not what's wrong with you. It's who am I for myself, and how am I showing up that has that kind of man be attracted to me, and me be attracted to that kind of man.
Right, yeah.
And
that's one of the, you know, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think like for a woman it's very important, because we always say like, why am I attracting this kind of person, instead of why am I choosing to be attracted? Why am I attracted to this kind of person? Exactly. So we like rob ourselves of agency at the get-go. You know, we're already like the damsels or the objects of desire or whatever, and they are the ones doing the choosing. And, you know, so turning it around is like the first step, I think, to some sort of consciousness. You make the choices, yeah. And
so there was a lot that was not working in my relationship with myself that I started doing that discovery process about, well, why is that? And started uncovering all these inherited conversations and inherited beliefs and what I had created myself and chose to believe. And as I started peeling that apart, I started to attract a better quality man. Enter Arnie.
We have a better man with us today.
However, Arnie was not interested in being in a committed relationship, although we had a lot of chemistry. We really got along together.
So you guys met like on a dating app or something?
Sure. So we did a transformational seminar, and we were in one of the follow-up sessions. And so that's how we met. And I remember her in front of the room saying men are cheaters.
Liars.
Oh, you did all that?
And it's funny because in my world as a guy, I was like, man, she's cute. I'm going to break that horse. I'm gonna go after her. I want to see what's going on.
She was a challenge.
And my past was I was going to be the eternal bachelor. You know, I didn't have to. Why would I? Settle down? And I get to do what I want when I want, and I don't have to have anybody tell me what to do, how to do it, or anything like that. Unlike Michelle, my parents are still married. So I came from, not a perfect marriage, but then which marriage is.
Right, that's right.
But my parents managed to stay together. They still are. I have a sister, so I have a pretty
stable
relationship with my parents. So that's what I grew up with.
A model, stable model.
But I thought I was gonna be the eternal bachelor until I met my match over here, and that's how we met. And so
what was the seminar about? Transformational what?
It was transformation. It's called Landmark.
I know Landmark. Yeah, gotcha.
And so it was it's transformational.
Yeah.
We started. It was a rocky relationship because I was clearly interested in her. I was very much attracted to her, not only physically, obviously she's beautiful, but then also her being, who she was, what she was up to. She was up to making herself better, her family better, things like that. But then I wasn't ready to commit yet. And so I had this tension between she's awesome and I don't want to commit just to her, and then how do you navigate that, right? So that's where she got me. That's where we're at.
How long did that last? The seesaw?
It was about 3 or 4 months. We were dating.
Oh, that's a very short time.
Yes, and then at that point, we were having a conversation one day, and it came up organically, and I said, yeah, I still really want to be in a relationship. I want to get married. And he said, yeah, nothing's changed.
So we kind of started to go out. So we dated, and then we stopped, kind of like broke it off. And it wasn't like even we broke it up, because then you might want to talk about this, but in her world, we were in a relationship. In my world, as a guy, I was just dating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was this was actually right around the time that I had started talking to my coach about this. So I started it looked like a relationship. And this is what I teach women, right? It might look like a relationship because you're seeing each other all the time. You're together all the time. We had started having sex already, but it wasn't a relationship. And that's when he said, nothing has changed over here. My light bulb went on, and I said,
what do you mean nothing has changed over here? I don't understand.
He still wasn't interested in being in a committed relationship.
Oh, okay. So you asked him.
No, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but that conversation came up. We were in that course, so it might have been
Well, people at some point say, are we exclusive? I mean, there is a moment, a pivotal moment, I might add, when one of the two has to pop the question, are we ready to be exclusive?
We train women not to do that because it puts you in a position, it just takes away your power. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I remember I was expressing something. It might have been something around the program. And then he said, yeah, nothing has changed. And for me, something clicked, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're still thinking that there's no commitment here. And he's like, yeah, but he had said that from the beginning, and I had heard it. But I did what a lot of women do, which is I heard that, and I thought, yeah, that's because he hasn't gone out with me yet. But when he said it this time, I heard it. And I said, well, if that's the case, then we can't see each other anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm starting to really fall for you. I'm falling in love with you. And as much as I wish that you were where I'm at, clearly you're not. And even though I love you, I love me more. And I'm going to move on. And it was the first time I had ever said that. Because usually my old way would have been to try and convince him about how awesome I am and how great it is. And don't you see how awesome we are together?
You're going to miss out.
You're going to miss out on that. And it was the first time that I actually said, no, I'm choosing me. And we stayed mutual friends because we were part of a mastermind group together. But it was like friends, and we had that conversation. It's friends, like no friends with benefits, that's it. I'm not going to put myself in that position and risk more than I have to. And then I just kept dating other guys that were great guys. And as I kept...
So you met them how?
How did I meet them?
Mm-hmm.
If some of them I met at Landmark, some of them I met online, some of them I met through people introducing me to different men. Some of them I met if I was somewhere with my girlfriends and somebody came over and talked to me. So there was no one way to do it, but I did keep dating. And at one point I was dating 5 guys, and it was the first time I'd ever dated so many guys at the same time, and it was all dating, and that was it. And then eventually the funnel started getting thinner, and I started dating one person exclusively. That still wasn't committed, but this time I was like, you know what? I'm going to see where this goes with this guy. And I actually told him, I said, I'm not going to be with anybody else. And he said, I'm not going to be with anybody else. And I said this to him, and hand on the Bible, I said this to him. And should the opportunity come up for me to have what I really want, I'm going to go for it. Because I was very clear that in my heart that I wanted to find the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with. And I wasn't willing to silence that anymore. And so, as God would have it, not luck, 2 weeks later, he mentioned that he had a change of heart, and he called me.
Yeah, then during this
Okay,
time,
one second. How long was that while you were separated and you were... Okay, a short time. Mm-hmm.
But then during this time, we still saw each other at least once a month.
Mm-hmm.
The mastermind.
And then I was stuck in a place of, I can't live with her, I can't live without her. You know, it's because then every time I saw her, then of course I had fallen for her, so I loved Michelle. I thought she was awesome, and then so I had to deal with myself around what do I have to do over here with me so that I can win this wonderful woman, because it already said it, and she wasn't like pressuring me. It wasn't like, Arnie, you got to do this. She just said, this is what I prefer. This is what I want to commit a relationship, and if not, we're not going to be together. That's just the way I see it. This is what I want, and so I had to deal with what a lot of guys deal with, which I think if you go the like the standard route, right? If you're going to be in a mutual exclusive relationship with someone, I think a lot of women, one of the things that when I talk to women, I have them seeing it, I think it comes more natural to women than it does to men, and that is the moment we commit to one woman, we're almost going against our own biology. Because if you take it all the way back in the day, you know, you go back, I don't know what, 2 million years, whatever it is that we've been around. You're here to spread the seed, you know, to procreate the species.
Right, that's right, yeah.
And so as a guy, that is what your natural instinct is.
That's right.
And the moment your consciousness takes over and says, you don't have to do that, you can actually have a different outcome, and you can actually be with one woman. But that it's almost so there's a tug of war between the guy's natural impulse and then what you're going to say. So that old adage, you know, which head are you thinking with? It comes to, and I explain that a lot to women because a lot of times I don't think women get the big deal that it is for a guy to commit to one woman.
Right.
You know, I think biologically it's a lot easier for a woman to do that because obviously, you know, if you're rearing children, you know, there's a whole mess of biological things that we can get into later on that it makes it a little bit easier for a woman to commit to a guy and be there, you know, hormones included and all that. But for a guy, it's a big deal to say that and to do that. So that's what I dealt with on my own.
Well, just to make it clear, for heteronormative, we're talking about the very cliche heteronormative masculinity and femininity, because there are plenty of women who present as men and just want to have, anonymous sex or countless partners, and there are plenty of men who are like serial monogamists, and that's what gives them comfort, knowing that they are, together, exclusive each time. Sure. So it happens. But like when you speak about the ancient animal that we all come from, and again, even that, I just want to, is a little footnote. Before patriarchy, there was matriarchy. So if you go a little further back in unwritten history, yes, men will, they are compelled to spread the seed and have as many children as possible, but also women are compelled to take as many partners as possible until they get impregnated. So at that, ancient, like prehistoric man and woman level, they were pretty similar in the need to impregnate. That was the main drive. The woman would take as many men, one after the other, often, because the man would pass out, fall asleep, and then someone else would have heard the orgasm and come for his turn, and so on, until she got pregnant, which still happens in the animal world during the mating, when they're in heat, during the mating season. And then the man would just kind of like continue, since they didn't get impregnated. That's the telling difference. The man would continue trying to get as many women pregnant as they could. So that's where we're all kind of coming from. And we've come a long way, because we're much closer to like the repression era than that free willing era. But so
there was a high risk during that time too, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they were doing for. I don't know what they were doing for like STD. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everything evolves at a particular point, right?
Right. Yeah. So anyway, so man has to fight his kind of like urge or compulsion to sleep around, right, in order to commit. And what's the perk for him?
Well, the perk is stability. At some point, the perk is more intimacy, and then the perk is really creating a future of value, and then meeting the person that's going to kind of like fulfill you or at least kind of match you, kind of like your other better half, the good. So, I mean, that's a perk for me. I can only speak for myself. I certainly, with my friends that I've talked to, there's a trade-off, right? Because I also remember that when I was by myself, there's this notion that as a guy, you can go around and sleep with all the women you want and all that stuff, which the possibility is there, but it doesn't mean that it's happening. Like the possibility is a reality every day. So it wasn't that every day I went out and I slept with 5 different women every day,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's another thing that, they don't tell guys, is that when you have a steady partner, you have a much better, much more, much richer supply of sex.
Yes.
Maybe not the quantity of partners, but definitely the quantity of the sexual pleasure. Because you don't have to work that hard for your sex. It's assumed, you don't have to like wine them and dine them and like impress them with your jokes and your stories and your outfits and whatever, your history. Right? All that hard work. And then maybe still be left hanging. So, I mean, that's like a big perk, in my opinion. Like, you're gonna get some.
But it's interesting, right? It's like the difference between the myth and the reality.
Right.
A lot of what we do, we operate under an assumption, under a myth, and it's not the reality that's what's actually there.
Yeah.
I think as human beings,
Right.
we're kind of interested in that one.
Right. Well, I think the myth, is perpetuated by like these, wealthy guys or whatever, celebrities or all that stuff that we see around in the TV that people aspire to. But if you look closer, like 90% of that is transactional sex. It may not be that someone is, hiring a prostitute, but they can afford to pay, in some token way, which the common man just cannot. So, when it comes to actual authentic sexual desire and how much how many girls a guy can get, without all the extra stuff, his money or his fame or whatever else he can offer the girls, it's not many people. It's not, because you need time. It takes time to convince her.
It does.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't like that, then it'll be a different world, right?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, definitely, you do need.
We're already overpopulated.
Anyway, I'm sure there's some guys out there that are doing it every day and getting it their way, but certainly not the vast population of us,
Yeah.
Of course, always the outliers, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you look a certain way, but it's not going to last that long with all that sex they're having.
It isn't. And there's something to be said. It's funny because everybody talks about, the first thing when you talk about relationships, the first thing that comes to mind is sex, right? But how much of the time that we're together are we spending having sex?
Yeah.
We're not like bunnies. Certainly maybe the first few weeks, months or something like that. But then after a while, when you get used to one another, it's less. It's just like the natural progression of relationship, right? Mm-hmm. And so if your relationship's only based on sex from the beginning, then that's a problem.
That's a big problem.
Because, I mean, if everything else falls in line, then that's great, because a strong, a powerful relationship, a sexual, affinity, it's great, because then the other part of it is harmful. You can have a wonderful person that you love and all that, but then if your sex part is lacking and that's important to you, because if it's not important to both of you, then that's a different story. But if it's important to you and it's not there, then of course there's less fulfillment in the relationship, right? But then how about the other, 90% of the time? What are you going to do? You better like each other, because if not, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a great point. Even if you have a very active sex life with your partner, let's say you're awesome and that goes on for an hour, 2 hours a night, and you're having it, 3 or 4 times a week, right? That's 8 hours. What are you going to do with the other many hours of the week that you're living with this person, even if you're not living in the same house, that you're connected with this person, that you're being with them? And then when you talk about marriage, you better really like the person you're thinking about saying yes forever to.
Yeah.
Because forever is a really long time.
Right.
And so there's got to be, great sexual chemistry, but then there's also has to be connection on other levels, whether it's, spiritual, the emotional, the psychological, that you connect on those levels.
Intellectual.
Yes, intellectual, very
mean
much.
that you have to like everything, because that's another misconception. You don't, if I like yoga and he doesn't like yoga, that is not, like, at the end of the day, when the shit hits the fan.
Yeah, you can have separate hobbies.
At a level of values, though, it is important that your values are a match.
That you respect them.
Yes. And you may not agree on everything, but if it goes completely against your value, what your partner stands for or what your partner believes in, that's going to be a problem. One of the things that, as we move, like, now into the conversation more about relationship than sex, is what I tell women all the time is, and I think that many women, at least in my experience, and I have coached women I've been coaching for over 30 years, specifically in this area for the last 11 years, and I have clients in every corner of the world, right? In South Africa, to Israel, to the UK, to Switzerland, and here domestically. And one of the main issues that women have is we don't give ourselves enough time to get to know the person we say we're falling in love with. We just don't give ourselves enough time to get to know who this person is. What's their character? What are their values? What is this person? First of all, is this person even interested in something with me? Are they interested in me? And more importantly, how do I feel when I'm with this person? Am I being myself? Do I feel suppressed? Am I pretending on something?
Am I pretending? That's a huge one.
Yes. And so the focus.
Because, like, this idea of blind love is exactly that.
Yeah, the Hallmark.
You're blind to yourself.
All over. Yeah, it's sometimes people fall in love at first sight. That's not usually the case. Mostly love is developed over time, and it's time spent together getting to know each other. So that has been the thing that with my clients, I really, I was just coaching somebody today, and she met somebody a week ago, and she's already freaking out because he's not texting her. I'm like, why are you giving, like, all your power away to this person who you met, by the way, haven't even met in person yet? That is right. They met online and they've been talking. They moved from the chatting to the talking. It's like that now is an opportunity for you to go, where's that coming from? Because it's not about him. This is another insert man, right? Insert person, situation. Could be anybody. So look inside and figure out what are the beliefs I have about myself that has me clinging to something I don't even know about yet. So that's, a lot of the work that we do.
Well, a lot of women are like, addicts to approval, because that's, you're raised this way. So your mom, your dad have to approve you, the way you look, the way you speak. You're being a good girl. You're such a nice girl. We train our kids with, like, no, no, no. And then when we obey everything, it's like, yes. So we take our real self out of the equation, and we just do what will get us the approval, and we forget what we like, because that's not what we're asked. When we're little children, it's not like, well, what do you want to do? what you feel is right. Nah. It's like, this is right, do it. Good job, good girl, So that kind of, like, pat on the shoulder, haunts us and follows us in adulthood. And I think a lot of women just love to be liked. They love the approval of the guys, And then, of course, it's the huge myth of, falling in love, which, is a huge moneymaker. I'm sorry, in American capitalism, Disney movies, all that stuff, right? So speaking of, like, ancient history, for, I don't know, untold centuries, until the Romance era, marriage was based on anything but, sex and intimacy. It was like, okay, you come from a similar background, the families have a similar amount of money, we can afford you, they can afford, to give you the dowry, blah, blah, blah. It was chosen by, like, the elders, the matchmakers. Everybody would come together and, like, put their heads down and say, this has a good chance of surviving.
To either bring empires together or to avoid war.
Right, to avoid war, exactly. All kinds of reasons, geopolitical peace,
but less
strategy,
to do with whether you like each other or not.
Nothing to do with that. They're like, whatever. They'll be naked in bed, they'll make babies. And, I mean, okay, that was extreme, because women were chattel, because the women were, like, literally passed as objects among the men. There is something to be said for making that huge decision on issues that are not sexual. But instead, because of this whole, myth of like blind love and coup de foudre, and, I just fell hard for him, all this falling. Like, why are we falling? Right? We should be rising. So,
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how, and I think that's how we're trained to give sex an extraordinary amount of unnecessary importance.
That's right.
And all the other aspects that really are going to, come into play in a marriage, much less importance. They pale in comparison. So, oh my God, he makes me come. Oh my God, he's amazing. He loves me. He calls me, I don't know, whatever, the nickname of the moment. That's it. We're meant to be together. What? Meant? What does that even mean? Speaking of meant, nothing. It's meaningless. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, sex is important because it certainly is. And it's important to the level that's important to you as a person and to the couple. Because there are couples that sex is a big deal for them. It's important. That kind of intimacy is essential. And then there's other couples that are not as interested. They're perfectly happy with having sex once every 3 months. And that's, I know, right? But if that's what works for them, that's what works for them. So it's not like to take away the importance of sex, because it certainly is if it's that important to you. But at the same time, to your point, yeah, it's not the only thing. It's not the only thing you can base. And once you're there, it's very natural, and it's, you don't have to do a lot of thinking, while the other parts of the relationship, there is a lot more of consciousness and awareness that you have to bring in. And as anybody who's ever been in a relationship, you got to know when to engage and when not to engage. In an argument, because you can certainly turn everything into an argument, or you have to want to give the other person space. And something that's really important to Michelle and I, it's personal responsibility. I think we've come of age where so much of our issues are finger pointing, and it's because of my dad, or it's because my mom yelled at me when I was 5.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or it has to do with a society, or this, or the hierarchy of, I don't know, wherever we're in and what we've inherited. And where do you come in? Where does your personal responsibility come in? Because if you really look at anybody that's successful at anything that they do in life, they've taken the bull by the horn, so to speak, and they've said, this is going to go this way because I say so. And then you deal with whatever breakdowns come around,
That's right.
But it doesn't happen when you're sitting back being a victim. So you're going to be responsible, be a victim to life.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great point. My sister and I, we usually say, here we are being dating and relationship coaches. When you look at our past, and I shared a little bit of it, a very quick version of it, we should be the poster children for relationships that don't work, not the coaches that are coaching women on how to make a relationship work. Because if I was going to be given by everything from my past and what I saw, what I experienced, what I believed up until the time I was 35, then I wouldn't be in the relationship that I'm in right now, which is a completely fulfilling relationship with someone who I respect and adore.
Thank you, honey.
You're welcome. And that I feel that he feels that for me too. And that I don't ever, and it's what I always wanted, I don't ever have to wonder how he feels about me. And he doesn't even have to say it, because he shows it in so many different ways. So if I was still living based on, because my mother, because what my stepfather did, because I got pregnant when I was 17, I wouldn't have the life that I have now.
Right.
And one of the things we do with our clients, yes, it's important to heal the inner child, but at some point you need to set that child free so she could go play. And now nurture the woman who's here, nurture the man who's here. And what does that woman want? And what does that man want? Free from everything that happened in the past, in this moment now. What is it that I want based on who I believe myself to be? And we will always make choices in our life based on who we believe we are, not on what others think about us.
Yeah. And it takes time and work. So what you did, you guys are kind of like role models for your clients. And what you did is, first you did the work. You went to the classes, you did the seminars, you practiced, you failed, you tried again. So that's very important. It just doesn't, you don't listen. Listening to a podcast is good. Yes. But, just 1 hour is not enough. You really have to be conscious and to practice and, every step of the way, not kind of like give into habit, right? Yeah. But make a decision what you want and who you want to be, how you want to express that. Do you guys have like, the 5 top rules of good dating or successful match or
Sure. I think Michelle can speak to that. But can I just address something that you said? Because it's not only what you've done, but it's an ongoing thing.
Right.
I think people think that, oh, I'm married, this should be it.
Right,
On the contrary, that's the start.
Yeah.
Right? And marriage, you work on everything. One of the things that Michelle and I are very keen in telling the people that we coach and whenever we speak in public is, look, we do have a great relationship, but we work on a relationship all the time, and it's not perfect.
Right.
It doesn't mean that we don't argue. Now, we have rules, what we call rules of engagement. From the first time that we got together and we were going to make it work, we said, here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to yell at each other, and we're not going to call each other names, and we're not going to insult each other. Respect above all. Mm-hmm. Now, that's something that works for us. You know,
I think it's a pretty good golden rule.
It works because, and particularly if you have children, because you don't want your kids to grow up in a household where the mother turns to the guy and says, the father says, "You're such an asshole," and then he turns back and says, "Well, don't be a bitch," and like that, you know, because then that kid's going to grow up thinking that he can turn to any woman if he's a boy or if he's a girl, it doesn't matter, right? And then say, "Hey, you know, I'm going to turn around and tell you that you're a fucking bitch." Mm-hmm. Well, that's not going to go well.
Yeah.
You know, that's not going to go well with the social contract that we've all, you know, somewhat
exactly.
inherited, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to put that in because it's not about being perfect. It's about consistency and about working. And then when there's a breakdown, then go back and say, okay, what did I say differently? Well, how could I have handled this differently?
Right.
And then commit to working it out. And the moment you make a mistake, emphatically go back and say, I made a mistake, you know, and then make amends about it. You know, don't just step over it and pretend and hope the other person forgets. Most of the time, people don't forget.
Yeah.
What it does is it just, when you do that, and this, we coach people on this a lot, is when you keep sweeping things under the rug, eventually it's going to pile up. And then when it piles up, it's probably going to explode. And that's why people feel that they're not heard and they're not seen in their relationship. Well, you're not showing up. So you need to show up. Now, on the opposite end, you can't just say everything that comes into your head, because your voice and your head should not always be on loudspeaker.
Don't believe everything you think.
And certainly don't articulate it.
Yeah, even more so. Do not.
So having that, what Arnie was talking about earlier, the emotional intelligence, the self-moderation, the self-awareness to know, like, okay, Arnie did that. That may not have anything to do with me. I know he's stressed out from work today. I don't have to have a 10-minute conversation. We need to talk. That's, by the way, rule number 1 is don't ever tell a man we need to talk.
So we'll run the other way.
Because it scares him off.
Here we go.
It scares him off.
It's a really bad thing. But
so how do you start?
if I'm gonna have a conversation with Arnie, I usually will tell him early in the day, honey, there's something that I want to talk to you about. It's about, and I'll tell him what it is about. So when would you like to talk about that? Because I don't want to spring it on him, just going now into the way that the man's brain works and the way that the woman's brain works. We're both very highly intelligent people. If you look at a brain, it looks the same in a woman as it does in a man.
Oh yeah. Hallelujah.
Machine, right? And then you see that there are different areas of the brains that light up in women.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
We do constantly.
We're smarter. In short, she's trying to say.
Well, what we do is, this is what we do really well, and men can do it too, but it just takes them longer, and women can misinterpret this. So this is a good thing for dating and relationships. So the more emotional the conversation is, the more
the man shuts down.
To process all of that.
That's right.
Women, we have 7 areas of our brain between both hemispheres that can communicate emotion, processing, and then verbalizing. Men have 2. So it's not that they can't. It's just that
pobrecitos.
We can talk to our friends and say, blah, 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 and the most intimate detail, down to the, like, what color was on the wall and all that. But the more emotional it is, for us, it's important for us to know if it's an emotional conversation, he may not respond right away to what I'm saying.
Because she doesn't get it all. He just doesn't.
He's going to process it.
And I've certainly been there in our relationship, particularly when we started. And it is physically impossible to talk at some of those points. So when a woman sees a guy that he says nothing, and that's misinterpreted like he doesn't care or he's shutting down this and that, is because it's so highly emotional that the brain, at least I can only speak for myself because that's the only brain I've ever had. But it's almost like you want to say something and you can't. You cannot articulate it. Like you're overcome with emotion. So you just walk away, because what are you going to do? Sit there and stare at somebody? You really can't. So But don't misinterpret that like the guy doesn't care or he just, no, it's like we do need that time to let things go. And I think women listening would really relate to, and certainly in your experience.
So like basically your processor is overwhelmed. That's what you're saying.
That's a good way of saying.
So like the woman's processor is not at all, because we have the 7
because we are
emotional
feeling and expressing, feeling,
Right.
saying, like we.
So if it's like turbo engines, we have 7 and men have 2.
And we're
Oi, yeah. So I'm only getting that because I actually, have known men who would like say to me, this is too much feeling. I'm having too many feelings. And I'm like, what is he even talking about? Like, this is the minimal feelings here.
even if you hear on our thinking, when we say, women say, I feel X.
Right.
Or I feel we should do X, Y, or Z, even if we're in a work environment. But what do men say? I think we should do X, Y, or Z.
Right.
So the default for men is
I have an idea. Sorry. Go ahead.
Very cerebral, and for women it's more about feeling.
I have an idea. It just came to me. This is a good conversation because, okay, I don't know I'm just gonna, it came to me right now. But you know that so many of us think of man as the narcissist, right? Who has no feeling and he needs the supply of the woman who is the victim in order to get feelings because he doesn't have any because he's born like NPD. But the truth is, very few people are actually, medically certified NPD. We all have narcissistic traits, especially nowadays, with social media and selfies and whatever. So it's possible, knowing this, that they are not just being narcissistic pigs, but they really, look at the woman who has this wealth of emotional experience and they want some of it. Like they want to feel that, love or pain, or I think that there is an element of fascination in the male of the species when they see that they are causing the female so much damn emotion and they don't feel it, but they like that they are causing it, right? And so I don't think that necessarily comes from malevolence for, a majority of these men. Yes, they may have big egos or what, we all have all kinds of stuff. But it could be, again, this limitation, that they cannot literally feel all that, so they can only experience it by default, like by watching it, by being near the woman who is experiencing it.
Well, I think one of the things we overthink humanity too much sometimes. We overanalyze.
Or maybe we overfeel.
Overanalyze, And then a lot of times we get the outliers and we make the outlier like that is the norm. Mm-hmm. Certainly there's men who are pigs. You think about Weinstein, you think about these guys that they have they've created like an institution out of, taking their advantage of women, Mm-hmm. And then some women said yes, and then some women didn't, and like that, right? So, and you can get into the world of that. But this is not, most men are not like that. Just like most women are not crazy, dramatic, psycho bitches that you can deal with, That's not, at least that hasn't been my experience. We all have our peaks and valleys and ups and downs and all that. So I think at one point we have to again, from the myth to the reality of it, I think stop analyzing. I think, look, I don't want to be a woman, but I appreciate women. I think it's amazing. I'll never know what it is, even if I wanted to, what it is to be, to have a baby grow inside of my stomach. That is something that's so unique to women that is amazing. It's one of the great mysteries of nature, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But I don't.
And it's very empowering.
What can I do to feel, that child inside my belly? I don't do that, because I think we have to understand that men are men and women are women. We're going to experience life differently. Can we learn from one another? Of course. Can women be stronger and can men feel more? Absolutely. But that's already there. However far we're going to go, it's already inherent inside of us.
Well, do you as a man feel that there is a crisis of masculinity right now? Post Me Too, post Weinstein, post all of that?
I think there is, in the sense that I think men don't know where we fit. I think we've been taken away from the norm that we knew, that we thought existed. And then we're kind of like in this conundrum, and that's kind of like the work that I like to do with men, is I think part of it we owe to ourselves to step up as men. So we got to be responsible. With great power comes great responsibility. So if you are in a position of power, you got to make sure that you don't yield that power loosely and that you take care of people. If you're a man and you have kids, if you were big enough to stick it in, then you should be big enough to pay for your kids' child support. You don't leave women out there. Doesn't mean that you necessarily have to stay together, because if it wasn't a good idea to begin with, then it wasn't. But then step up for your kids. Make sure you respect each other. If you expect respect from the women that you're with, then you have to dish out respect too, regardless of how she is with you. So there's a world of personal responsibility. And as men, I think it's different. It used to be that we had to take care of things and we said how it went. And from the onset of women's liberation, from the pill all the way to hygiene, and that now women are able to be out there in the world more with the advent of plumbing and other things like, I don't know, like
plumbing. We don't have to wash the clothes all day at the water well.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times we thought, men are subjugating women. I'm sure there must have been some of that, and historically it has been. But at the same time, physiologically, it was very difficult for a woman to be out in the workforce when every time she had sex, almost every time she got pregnant.
Yeah.
Then she had to take care of kids, because what are you going to do?
And then she was bleeding all over the place once a month.
Then you're bleeding all over the place, and there's the hygiene of that. So there were real physical limitations.
Right.
That had nothing
Being
to
the
do with
generator of life was physically limiting that way.
So with great responsibility, right? You're not responsible for this, but it's almost like a big burden as well. And so it wasn't until the advent of all these different technologies that women actually were able to I don't want to say grow, but to unleash themselves in society the right way, and not even the right way, but in a way that really provided as much as she had to offer, and almost
So is it good? I mean, good and bad. I mean, those are silly words, but do you think that, female lib has actually been useful, or do you think that it's causing all kinds of confusion and making both sides a little more unhappy than before?
Anything that's taken to any extreme can cause an issue, right? So I'm a powerful woman. I'm a strong woman. I believe in equality between the sexes, and I don't have to prove that I'm better than a man or put men down or be the man in a relationship, because there are gender roles in a relationship. And going back to the neurobiology of it, there are things that we each need, right? So I can be a feminine woman working in a world. I don't see it as a man's world. It's my world. And I worked in a company before, I've been doing this for 11 years. And in my past life, I worked at a company that when I joined it, there was one other woman executive. And at the end, when I left, there was a woman president in the company. So we come a long way, baby. We also have, I do think to some extent, we have confused men. They don't know if to open the door, not open the door. Do I call her? Do I not call her? Does she expect me to just do this or that? And when do we have sex? We have really confused men. Some women, for whatever reason, you said it, some women, they're fine having sex with multiple partners. Not all women are like that. Most women actually are not like that. So they're caught in it. We're caught in it with them. And this is why the work that we do is so important, because what I have seen and what I have seen has destroyed not only marriages, but has kept smart, beautiful, intelligent, powerful women, career-driven women, successful women single for a long time, is that they're operating so much in their masculine that they forgot that if you are a woman who wants to attract a man, what he is attracted to is your femininity. Men 100%. Who are attracted.
So what is femininity?
So there is a feminine energy, right? There's an openness, receptivity. Doesn't mean that you're weak.
Doesn't mean you're passive.
Doesn't mean you're passive. I'm not passive in my
Michelle is never passive.
I do know how to express myself in a way that I can say what I feel and I don't have to make a demand on him. Because I respect him and he talks to me the same way. You get what I'm saying? So, but I can be, I don't have, for example, some people are going to cringe when I say this, but I can let him take care of all the finances. I have no problem with that. You know why? Because at 17, I was paying bills and I was paying them till 35, and I don't have a problem with that. But I know where every penny goes. I know what's in there. I know where it goes. I don't have to be worried about having my own thing and him having his own thing. First of all, I trusted him enough to marry him I'm not going to not trust him with
Right.
what I have.
Right.
And whether I brought more or less into the relationship when we got together is different. I mean, you have a lot and you're afraid somebody's going to take it from you, just get a prenup. It's not a big deal. Like, you don't have to make it all about that.
And the partnership doesn't mean that she doesn't know where the finances are, and she doesn't have to have a say in it. Because on the contrary, I think part of it is we're so competing with each other that we forget to create a partnership and collaborate with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's missing here.
Yeah.
I don't have to feel like a woman feels. I don't have to equate myself to a woman to be like what a woman is, and she like me to appreciate who she is.
Yeah.
And to have us, kind of like, complement one another, and then we collaborate, which is what we work with in marriages, is that you want to be collaborative with one another. I say, look, Michelle, I'm going to take care of that. She doesn't have to worry about if something got paid this month, because I said, I'm going to take care of the finances. I'm going to make sure that things get paid. We have a joint bank account. So, I make sure, but she doesn't have to worry about that. Just like there's other things that I don't have to worry about. And there's just things that we both worry about,
Right.
Like, hey, we need to buy toilet paper. I'll buy it sometimes, and sometimes she buys it. And then sometimes she gets on it with me because I see that there's toilet paper missing and I don't go buy it. And then I'm kind of like expecting for her to buy it, you know? But there's little things
I think, sorry, like the toilet paper. I know, that's not a big problem. But I'm going to say, I think that there is a lot of confusion because it's such a historically still recent development, right? So it's very hard for people to know which role to play comfortably. We women, both men and women, I think, get defensive easily. Men feel like they don't want to give up territory. Women feel like they have to make clear right away that they're not like the old type of woman. They are the new type of woman. So they're not taken for granted. So they have their say. And then a lot of it is unconscious, which is what we've been saying kind of consistently in our conversation, how to make the unconscious conscious, is the goal. So a lot of it seems to me that it's unconscious. So even some really strong women, when it comes to like romance and fall in love, make themselves into like a little girl, or, they have a few drinks and they become someone else, they're like, they compliment the guy and they kiss his ass and they have all these mannerisms. I have definitely a lot of friends who this happens to. They really cannot control it. It's their mating language is very different from anything else that they engage in. And it's when they seem like most vulnerable and cutie, but it doesn't last. It's not like they do this 10 years later with the same guy when they're about to, let's say, have sex. No, it's the seduction mating stage. So there is still a remnant of that. So there are these like super strong, bossy women, and you would never know if you're a guy dating them that they are this way for a good, like maybe 6 months. When you start like getting, and again, it's not, I don't think it's conscious, but it's very hard for women to know that fine line between, I'm a feminist woman, I want equality, I want us to discuss everything, I want like honesty and respect and trust, and still be like sexy and hot and feminine and desirable. Cause like when you say these things, you're not. It's like throwing cold water on the passion. So you avoid the topic because you don't want to like ruin the moment. And it all goes unsaid. And, then by the time you actually get to say it, either it's too late because, there have been like assumptions of who you are that are wrong. The disappointments have already occurred. So I think that there is a lot of, suffering and a lot of breakups that happen because people do not speak to each other. Because there is no language that we're all equally comfortable with, Arnie brought it up when you gave those specific examples and you said, this is how you speak about our differences, or this is how you apologize. And you actually like put it in quotes and you said, I am sorry. Yeah. No, just now too, you said it. Yeah. So I love that. Like, I think that's, what, all educators, coaches have to do is basically give people their cliff notes. This is how you like learn to say this. and if both genders like get the same notes, there won't be all this misunderstanding.
I think to a certain extent that I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think that cliff notes are great, but first you have to do, this is my belief and this is what I've seen as work. You've got to do the inner work first. Because if I give you a tactic, and this is what a lot of other coaches do, we don't do this. We could give you some tips and tricks on how to improve communication. But if your underlying thing in saying all of that, going back to the example of your friend, is because she feels like a man is going to take advantage of her, that's what we really need to work on. Because where is that coming from? Because if you're already coming into a dating experience, I can't be myself. I have to pretend. If he knew that I was really this way, maybe I'll wait 3 months and then I'll tell him and let me see if he likes my friends. And you keep repressing yourself. That is not going to lead to anything long lasting. And you might even get to a relationship and you might even get a ring on your finger and into a marriage, but is it going to last? So I think that first, all of us getting where are our fears really coming from and are they real? And if they're not, then let's replace them with beliefs that actually empower us, that are authentic to us, so that when I'm sitting in front of a man, and I'll have to tell you, when I first saw Arnie, hates when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. The first thought is that it's the most beautiful man I've ever seen.
Oh,
Second thought,
and it was love at true sight.
It was definitely chemistry at true sight. It was definitely passion. Thought was, I'm not even going to be his friend right now. And this is when I first saw him, because I was just working on me for the first time. Like, why do I always have to have a guy in my life?
That's a very good,
right? So I can understand that, but I didn't, from the very beginning, I was myself. Now, sometimes that didn't work, being myself. And what I've learned in going back to the way that I could tell him anything that's on my mind. Now, I could tell him and anybody anything that's on my mind, understanding that A, you do not have to agree with me. B, I'm not here to convince you. And C, I'm going to focus on what I feel, what I believe, and it's not up to you to validate that for me. So I can tell him, we were having a conversation yesterday. I'm somebody who needs my me time. I'm a twin, identical twin. So since before I was born, I have been sharing space with somebody. I think that's where it comes from, that at least one day a week, I just need to be by myself. That does not mean that I don't love my husband and I don't love being with him. I need that for me. And I can have that conversation with him. And then we can
say,
talk
honey,
about it.
Can I have the room to myself?
There's one night a week where I am just going to stay up all night. I don't know why, but I like to stay up all night watching movies, TV, reading, doing whatever I want, especially if I've had a really long day, and sometimes my days can be really long. And we had a conversation about that. And expressing to him that doesn't have anything to do with me not wanting to be with you. That has to do with me wanting to be with me.
Right.
So I don't minimize myself. And this is something, and we'll talk about it later, the event that I was talking to you about, that we're going to talk a lot. We're going to spend 3 days talking about how can you really become your authentic self? How do you communicate in a way that men can hear you and anybody can hear you without you having to come across so bossy? Because I'll tell you, one of the things that these, like you were saying, these, powerful women, you want to turn a man off, be controlling. You want to turn him off twice as fast? Be dramatic. There are two things that, and Arnie can speak more about that. They are like killers for men. Now, that doesn't mean that a man is not super turned on by a powerful woman, because they are. It's very, especially if a man is confident himself, he's going to be turned on by a powerful woman who knows who she is, who's up to something.
Who challenges your mind.
Yeah.
I mean, who challenges the way you think. If you're a guy and you're up to big things in the world, you need somebody. Here's one thing that women don't, I'm not going to say women, but sometimes we don't communicate properly. When we come home, if you're with someone, that woman that you're with, right, as a heterosexual guy, it's important that you get that support. We get so beat up out in the real world. Making decisions, making sure that the other guy doesn't get in front of you. If you're doing a business deal, making sure that you make the sale, if that so it comes, you pay the bills, or you're able to buy that, go on that vacation, whatever it is. You have so many things that you have to produce results for. That it's great to come home and have an environment where you feel supported. At the very least, if you come home and what you get is questioning you or anything like that, that's debilitating. It's horrible. And there's nothing that debilitates a man more than the woman he loves. I can get criticism from you. I can get criticism from anybody. But if I come home and then Michelle criticizes me, that criticism is going to have that much more of an effect on me than anything else. I guess the thing we can
because you're wide open.
Huh?
Because you're open.
Yeah. And she and her opinion matters. Her opinion of me matters.
Right, but also it's your safe space. Like, you're not in war mode. You've taken off your armor.
That's exactly right.
You're relaxing, so it gets to you.
Yeah, it really does. So as a guy, it's important that you get that kind of validation, that kind of support from women. It doesn't mean that you're passive. It doesn't mean that she challenges me sometimes, but in a way that's productive. Asks me a lot of questions that has me think differently. Oh yeah, I could have done that differently, or I could have done this, or I could have done that. What doesn't work is telling people what to do, particularly when you tell a guy what to do, or nag on how to do things, So it's important that we find where the differences are, and how we, again, collaborate with one another versus not. And just to the point of maybe the lady, when you mentioned the woman, though, when you go on a date, I think so many times, and this is just an opinion, right? The women's liberation movement has also robbed women of that gushiness, of that sweet spot of what it is to be like a woman. To be taken care of, but in a good way. Not taken care of because you're less than, but taken care of out of respect, out of the queen that you are. That you come home and you're loved and appreciated. And I open the door. I don't open the door because Michelle cannot open the door. I open the door out of respect for her. Because I don't want her to I don't know, mess up her nails.
See, that's like very, very old-fashioned for me. I'm just going to say right now.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't know what the fuck to do when the door is open. I'd be like, what?
As a guy, I get pissed
Oh
off.
my God, I can open the door. Oh my God, I don't know. It would be a little much for me.
Well, listen, for me as a guy, I'm a guy and I can open my own door, right? And
Yes, you can. Lucky for you.
To open your own door kind of thing, right? But you know what? If there's a guy in front of me, he opens the door, or a woman for that matter, and slams it on my face, I think that's rude.
Oh yeah, that's rude. Yeah. That's super rude. Yeah. We
And for
can
me,
open
it's a
the door
pleasure.
for each other, I would hope.
When I open the door, so when I open the door for a woman, or I open a door for Michelle, or if I open a door for another guy, it's an act of gentility, of being...
No, it's super sweet. But I mean, for me personally, it feels a little awkward if I'm in the car and we're parked and I know, because, you get to know a guy's ways, that I have to sit here restless, waiting for him to come all the way around and open the door. And then, of course, I get self-conscious because I'm like, he's right there watching. And then I'm like, I think I'm going to roll out of the car by accident or something. So I lose my own natural pace because I'm on the spot, and I think, okay, I gotta come down like a lady. What would how would the foot come down to be ladylike? It's a little too much pressure.
So you're overthinking it.
I'm so overthinking it because it's not coming it's not natural anymore. It's like the 21st century. So
I mean, it's
I'd much rather be opening the door for the guy. Honest to God.
well, this is what we were talking about, right? This is where we get confused. And if it's not a big deal for you, I love that. I love
You love it.
15 years, still opens the door for me. Like, that for me is like...
You guys with the door opening?
I do. I open the door, and I don't think... I open the door for my mom, too.
Yeah, and your sister.
And for my sister. And it's not because they can't. It's me being deferential to them. Like, the status that they have in my life, I want to take care of
No,
them.
I like that. I like that.
So it's kind of contextual, right? It's not... So it's never like, oh, I can't do it myself. Of course you can.
Of course you can.
Okay?
So when you go places together, who drives?
I usually drive.
You drive?
And there's times that she drives, but it's funny, we don't even think about it. I usually take the drive. If I drink a little bit too much, then she definitely says, I'm driving.
And then if we're both drinking, it's Uber.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but that might be a standard, like societal standard, but it's not like if Michelle wants to drive, I have a problem with her driving. On the contrary. So I think this part of like the mores that we've talking about, it's like the confusion is, if the guy wants to do for me, then that implies that I can't do for myself. And nothing could be further from the truth. On the contrary. And the guy, it's almost like, I think, look, as a guy, sometimes I like to be taken care of. So I'm sure that as a woman, it might be great for a woman. I've never been a woman in my life, but to feel taken care of, to feel like I can just sit back, because that's what I hear from moms all the time. My God, if I could just sit back and have somebody take care of the kids and do all the stuff that I'm doing a million times. So why not be taken care of if the guy wants to take care of you, but not because you can't and you're less than, but because you deserve that.
And nobody really has permission to make me feel like I'm less than anyway, unless I give it to them. So if I've never felt like that, but if I, for whatever reason, felt that there was something that was being done in a degrading way, he's never been that way, but I wouldn't have no problem saying, you know what, that doesn't feel right to me. And so but that comes from, and it's not perfection, because I make my mistakes. There's no like angel wings underneath this black blouse, right? I make my mistakes, but I become so conscious about this from the
That's it, right.
that it does become second nature. So that's why for us, it's really important to share this with other people, because it's great that it works for us, but we know that there are people who want to be in great relationships and they're struggling and they're suffering because they don't have the skills. They don't understand why they keep making the same mistake over and over again, even though they know it doesn't work, even though they know it ends fine for 3 months and then he's going to disappear, he's going to ghost out. But we keep doing the same thing. Why? Because we don't have an alternative. We don't have something else that we've unlearned or learned to be able to have what we really want in our hearts. And for many women, we don't even express what we really want, because we think that saying, I want to be in a relationship means that we're something less than too.
Exactly.
I don't need a man. I want a man in my life.
Exactly.
And if I want it, I'm going to say it.
Right. Exactly. No, I think that's beautiful. And as you said, I mean, I think you were saying it, Arnie, that we change, we evolve, we change what we like to eat, we change our favorite colors, the way we dress, our politics, all kinds of stuff. So we don't, we are going to change and grow in our relationships if we are in those long-term relationships. So yeah, you have to kind of keep always, honing the skills and being attentive and allowing space for each other to change and grow and figure out how you're together. Yeah. So it's not something that you're born knowing, but we think it is, we think okay, I'm alive. I know how to be with people. Not at all.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I think a lot of times we should take a tip from nature. There's a reason, or at the very least, it works that we evolved. We got to where we're at, given the differences that we have as a man and as a woman. And I think we forget that we complement one another, and so instead of rejoicing in that, and instead of getting more interested in what makes me a woman different from a guy, and what makes me a guy different from a woman. And yeah, of course we have equality under the law, and we have equal minds, but even in reality, that's not even true, because there are scales of intellectual prowess between men, and the same with women. Just like there's a strength, there's guys that are 100 times stronger than I am, and then there's guys that are not, so we're different, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's and as sexes, we have to applaud the differences that we are. And if you're a woman, maybe the woman that drinks a little bit and then becomes like a little girl and becomes giggly and fun and a little bit vulnerable, maybe that's her real sense. Maybe that's the feminine coming out. And it doesn't mean that you don't get to protect yourself. It doesn't mean that you don't get to be smart, because obviously you're out there dating and you don't know who the guy across from you or 2 seats down is. But let your feminine go. Just like a guy, step up. Don't go out on a date. I'm kind of old fashioned like that.
Oh yeah, I know. I've noticed, Arnie.
But pay for the freaking drink. At least the first one. Obviously, this day things are costly, right? So if you start to date each other, and it might be like, hey, I'll get it this time. Let's go halfsies this time around, because it got really expensive because we've gone out 3 times this month or whatever, or even this week, right? So you get to have those conversations, but at least at the beginning, step up. Tell this woman, I'm different than all the other guys, and here's why: because I love you, because I respect you, or at least I'm going to treat you like the princess that you are, even though we've known each other for 2 days. As a guy, if you sit, nobody wants to sit with a guy that doesn't know what he's going to do. Where do you want to go on a date? Oh, I don't know. I tell guys, I have 3 plans. Tell her, what do you like to eat? And then if you're going to go on the date, then there's this restaurant that's the best. I don't know. You like to have Cuban? I'm going to have 3 Cuban restaurants that we can go to. One close to your house, one that's the best. Or if you like sushi and you like Italian, I'm going to have a restaurant that we're going to go to. Now, guess who picked the restaurant? You did. But then I'm gonna give you some options here. This is where the collaboration comes. But it's good that I hate that conversation. Where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go?
I know that is just
it's crazy, doesn't it? Yeah, we were thinking. So anyway,
it's a ball breaker. But I don't know if it's overthinking. It's like one is passing the responsibility to the other, hoping to please the other, but also secretly not wanting to bother. wanting to like not deal with it. And
Just want to please women. Good men.
well, I do think that women, for sure, like men who will take charge in that way, who'll be like, I'll be at your place at such and such time, I'll take you, or I'll drive, we'll go to this, and then she can say yes or no, but there is something concrete, and that specific, offer or invitation tells her that he's interested. Yes. And we both sexes, I think, want to feel that they're special, that they have more, the other is interested in them more than anyone else. However, of a fallacy that might be, especially in the beginning, you have to give that impression that there is something unique, to motivate.
Yeah, and women bring a very different view of life than I can experience as a man. So when we think about femininity and masculinity, if I want to go out with a masculine woman, I'll just go out with my guy friends.
And watch the game at the bar.
Which a lot of women who end up in the friend zone, they don't realize they're being like the buddy because they're being so masculine in their way of being. Now, I can be feminine and wear and go to a football game. That's not the point. It's when we all, men and women, we both have masculine and feminine in us.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So what's going to attract the masculine man is the femininity. But when I start telling him what to do, trying to control him, here's where we're going to go on Friday night. Now, if he's the kind of guy, like you said, who likes to take charge because that's part of what he expresses his masculinity, and there's a woman who doesn't give him the opportunity to do that, he's going to be turned off by her. So what we train the women who come to our events to do is let him take the lead. You're leading all day. You're leading people. You're leading children.
Oh yeah, especially the children. Yeah,
but
right.
Here's the other side of that. The guy's going to take the lead, but what does the guy want? He wants to please his woman. So what am I going to? I may take the lead on the restaurant that we're going to go on, the options, but guess who's going to pick which restaurant we're going to go to? You are.
Well, maybe. That's up to the guy. I've known a hell of a lot of guys who just go where they want to go, which is fine. I mean, who cares?
I'm surprised because I think I'm going to please you, right? I guarantee you that no guy wants to ever take a woman on a date where she's sitting there saying, this was horrible.
True.
I guarantee that. Now, there might be some misses, right? Oh, I misread. I thought you like sushi and you're vegan, But for the most part, but this is kind of like the play, right? It's kind of like, the guy will take charge, but the guy wants to take charge in pleasing the woman, So it's not like I'm going to take charge. Of course, there's the outliers. There's the guys that don't think about anybody but themselves, right? But then that's not the standard. And that's, if you go out on a date with a guy that doesn't care about you, that didn't ask you what you like to eat, where you like to go, what you would like to see, and just does everything without so much as getting interested in you, that's good information. You want to know that.
Yeah, you want to know.
Surprise you, but I want to surprise you in something that you're going to like, not something that you're not going to like.
Exactly, yeah. So how many dates before sex? On average, do you advise?
So I'll tell you.
Michelle does the sex.
I'll just tell you. There's no number of issues. Some people say, 6 weeks, 6 dates or 2 months or what. This is what I would say, and this is what I tell my clients. When you want to be in a committed relationship, you want to stand for that. And the women who come to our programs, they do that,
right? Yeah.
So have sex with somebody who you know what their plan for you is in their life. So if he's just dating you.
So no sex until you know if he's serious.
Committed. If it's a committed relationship, he's committed to you, and you never have to ask him where's this going, because men will tell you when you're in a committed relationship. They're not going to say we're in a committed relationship. They'll say something like, I don't want to see anybody else but you. He'll start introducing you to his friends as my girlfriend.
There will be clear signs for sure.
You won't have to wonder. If you're wondering, you're still not in.
You're not there.
Why is that? Because, and I know we talked about the women who can have sex and it's just sex, and some people are like that. Most women are not, and we become very bonded every time we have sexual intercourse, particularly if we have orgasm, with oxytocin being released, the bonding hormone. So you're putting yourself at emotional risk, not to mention, if you don't take care of to protect yourself, all other kinds of risks. But don't risk more than you have to. And if you're dating multiple people, you don't want to be sleeping with all of them, because that's also genetically, you are.
Yeah, that's just emotionally very confusing.
Yeah, that person leaves a piece of them. There was a study that was just done, right? Remember
that? A piece of them in you. So it's not about being old-fashioned. It's really about I'm going to be with somebody who I know wants to be with me. We can not even hang out because I hate that term. We're going to date. We can go out for as long as you want. If you want to be with me and I want to be with you, there'll be a commitment. And at that point, I'll go.
So if the guy makes the move after the second date, which is very common, she says.
The guy will make the move on the first date if he has a chance.
Oh yeah, he will. Yeah, for sure. So what does she say? Do you have it?
Today, I'm
not ready. And then again, I'm not ready. And then again, I'm not ready.
Says, oh, it's too soon for you. Yeah, I actually don't have sex until I'm in a committed relationship.
Okay.
But,
that
I'm
would have
attracted
the
to
guy.
you too. You want to let him know if you're attracted to him. I'm attracted to you too, but that's just my preference. And then what?
No, and that would have the guy think. Because I think part of the game of the guy is, of course, look, if it was up to us, we would have sex with every woman we're attracted to, right? But at the same time, there's that old adage, then you don't want the wife, the girl that you're with, to have had sex with all the guys before you,
Right.
Kind of thing. So it's like, hey, you want your cake and eat it too kind of thing, right? But I think the man would respect
Double standard.
I remember back in the day, I think it was like 25 years ago or something like that. When I first started dating, there was this girl I was very attracted to. We used to be at the gym together, and I asked her out on a date. And she was flat out told me on the first date, she says, you know what? Any other time, we will leave here and we'll go have sex. But I'm in a point in my life where I only have sex with someone I'm committed to and someone that's going to be committed to me. It has nothing to do with you personally. That was the first time I ever heard that. But I was taken aback. I was like aghast at the missed opportunity of who I thought was this Casanova. And at the same time, I was filled with respect. I was like, this is a woman. I'm even more attracted to her because she respects herself. And this is a woman that knows what she wants. And every guy wants that. And by the way, if you sell the cow, if you give it away for free, I'm going to be less likely.
The cow.
That's what I was saying, right? What is it?
Yes.
To insult half the people who are listening. Yeah, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free?
That's
it's an
right.
awful way of saying it, maybe, but it does point to a fact. If I'm with you, then see, here's the deal. And I know this from Michelle and listening to her. If you take the sex part of it, which is so there for everybody, right? Then you know whether he really likes you or not, beyond the sex. Is he interested in your intellect? Is he interested in you as a person? Does he enjoy your company? Or is it that he's just horny and he wants to have sex with somebody? If you take the sex apart, all those questions get answered right away very simply.
And for me as a woman, I have my mind completely clear. So I know why I'm with you too. Like when I have sex with someone and I get now more emotionally attached, this is where it's very possible to start avoiding the red flags that show up.
Exactly.
It's where I start making concessions.
True.
Where I would not make concessions.
Right. Yes.
Why? Because I've already attached myself to this
yes,
person in
exactly.
this way. So now the thing that I know would have had me walk out, now I'm a little hesitant. And the other thing that happens too is then a woman starts to make this be the relationship. Why? Because now she's only sleeping with this one person. So now it has to work out.
Right.
Much harder.
And there's definitely a difference, again, since this is your thing, in the sexes, there's a big difference between allowing someone to come inside you and kind of like invade your private space instead of like going inside someone else and then pulling out. Anyway, it's just the commitment level is very different.
The physicality of it is very,
physically, on the very physical, on the physical body part, it's just the woman is so much more vulnerable than the man, sexually, especially in the beginning. So we already have committed more than they have by having sex with them, because that's just how we're anatomically built.
Yeah. That's right.
And I know that you said like everybody can have sex, but it's actually, once you feel comfortable and the sex is good, and I don't know if you give advice on that. I say you have to try quite a few times, like at least half a dozen times before you can even like have a judgment on whether sexually you have chemistry and it's working. Because to begin with, he's sleeping with you the way he slept with like his last girlfriend or person, whatever he knows about the general female body and not you, right? So it takes time, and you also learn as you go. But yeah, I mean, by the end of that trial, let's say time, you have given him so much. So you have like you've got to the point where the sex is good finally. So as you say, that's when it starts, this kind of like delusion and willful self-deception and, stretching your boundaries and making your, hard limits into soft limits and, finding excuses and, kind of like using up all of your empathy in ways that are self-defeating, that are self-sabotaging.
Yeah, a lot of times when women say, one of the fears, especially if a woman had her heart broken and now she's going back out there again, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to lose myself. Well, you never lost yourself. You gave yourself away.
That's right, yeah.
It's owning that. Like, I gave myself away. Why did I? What was it that was running me that had me say, I can't really stand for who I am and what I want here? You can answer those questions, then you're not going to make that mistake again the next time, particularly if you really resolve that you don't, and it's not about judging what you've done in the past. You're not going to get anything out of that. It's actually going to be counterproductive for you to judge yourself. It's about owning it, taking responsibility for having done it, and the consequences that brought, and now taking responsibility for making more conscious, mindful choices that are aligned with your values and your boundaries, so that when you go out with him, you're actually there, because he can't fall in love or rise in love. I'm going to steal that from you. Rise in love with you if you're not there. Mm-hmm. And then that's why people then go, oh my gosh, they turn into a completely different person. Because you did it.
Yeah.
You turn into a completely different person.
Yeah.
There's an aspect of the dating dynamics I love that Michelle brings up in her sessions, and that is a lot of times when you're dating, particularly for the woman, she's like, is he going to like me? Am I going to be the one? Am I, how about you turn that around and you go out with him several times to see if he's the one for you, if you're interested in him.
Right, yeah.
It's kind of like, if you think about it, it's kind of like a job interview. The guy goes out, you'll see that when the guy goes out with a woman, he's going to invite you. First, we'll go out a couple of times, and then at some point, he's going to bring you in with his friends. But that doesn't mean that your girlfriend, he's just checking to see if you fit inside of his world. Oh, yeah. That's what we're doing that. I may say, hey, let's go on a vacation together. And the woman might think, oh my God, that's it. And no, I'm just thinking, is this going to be a match? Is this going to be something that might work out? And so be cognizant of that as a woman, but take on the dating as this is for you too. I don't know if you want to add a little bit.
I think that's exactly where the focus should be. It's because it's about so many women, and not to criticize it, but they're waiting for somebody to choose them rather than realizing.
Yes. I think that's like one of our main topics today, as it turned out, which is very important. Right. Yeah.
To make the right choice, you have to know who you are.
Yeah. Well, I started this podcast very, very specifically, if I'm going to like pinpoint a moment when I realized we women have finally been granted for the first time in written history, the power of consent. So I thought this is extraordinary. We don't even understand what extraordinary moment we're in, because we really get to say yes, yay or nay. We didn't for so long, and then when we had the sexual revolution, it was also such a gray area.
It was very much reactive.
Yeah, it was exactly. Yeah, you just kind of like felt that in order not to be repressed, you kind of gave your body away without knowing agency or consent, because that made you like, liberated. But it alienated you completely from your body. In a sense, you were like pimping it out because you didn't, you were not aware of whether or not you wanted to be with someone. You just kind of went with it.
Yeah.
So sad, right? But we've all done it, or at least have been in that space in our youth. And I feel that having consent finally gave women the understanding that we get to choose. So, we extend that to the entirety of our relationships. We get to choose, we get that agency to choose the man that we want to be with. The man who we would like to, impress, but not because he wants us, not because he, has picked us and we're like, flattered, but the reverse. Yes. So that's beautiful. And I really think it's revolutionary. And I think, I really respect, what you guys do and the value of what you do, because it takes people away from like the nonstop psychology. I don't want to like necessarily knock psychology, but I think it emphasizes what we were saying earlier. My parents, my aunt, I was treated this way, the blame, the, victimhood, repeating always that kind of like sorry tale. So on an action level, it's not so useful. And what you do is actually useful. You're giving the tools. You're saying, take the psychology out of it for the moment, because we don't have time for that. It doesn't serve you.
Right. Just as a point of reference, not the reason behind.
Right. Yeah. You live in your moment in this world of ours. Your time is, relatively short.
Mm-hmm. And for me, the access to that for women is their femininity. There's so much power when a woman is feminine and assertive at the same time. That's like, it's so alluring, because a guy doesn't want to be with a heterosexual guy, as you say, right? Mm-hmm. A guy doesn't want to be with a guy. A guy wants to be with a woman that's different from what he's got. And it doesn't make it better or less. It's just different, and women who are feminine and assertive at the same time is such a powerful combination that's where you fall in love.
What happens is that many times women, we confuse assertiveness for aggressiveness.
Right.
And, we've lost the ability to be gracious and have become entitled. And so we need to get back to, that's what we mean by femininity, allowing that to come out. There's nothing that I deserve to be treated with respect, and I'm not entitled to force somebody to feel something they don't feel for me, give me something they're not willing to give, commit to something they're not willing to commit to right now. And if I can be so solid in my relationship with myself that that's where I'm coming from, then the person on the other side doesn't have to feel threatened or challenged in a way that it's like, now this is work, right? This is going to be hard work. Mm-hmm. Instead, men are out there all day, we call it slaying the dragon all day. And they
what?
Have to like take the next sword out and the next shield to protect themselves. What they do want, though, is someone who is not behind them but beside them, and can bring out the best in him. He's bringing out the best in her. And together, they're creating something. Mm-hmm. Whether that is making a difference in the world of relationships, or whether that is raising children that are going to be good people, good citizens in the world, and make the own difference that they were created to make in the world.
Yeah. And the last thing for guys is just for us to be responsible for what we got. Responsible for our history, responsible for what we bring to the table now. Responsible for creating that partnership with women, but really stepping up. And stepping up to, take care, but not take care because you can't, but take care because women deserve it. And step up and be the guy and lead if you need to. And sometimes leading is letting the woman lead sometimes, because that's what's necessary, but having a plan, knowing what there is to do. Don't be caught with your pants down, so to speak, Right. Be responsible. If you take an action and there's an impact of that action, do something about that. Because that's what has you be a man. I don't know how else to say it.
I love everything that you said. I'll just add for the male listeners and watchers, that one of the things that women find the most attractive in men is confidence, for sure, but it's integrity. That we can count on you to be who you say you are, do what you say you're going to do, show up how you say you're going to show up. That is going to create in us feeling safe and secure, which allows us to be more vulnerable. And without vulnerability, there's really no true intimacy.
True.
So it's a
either sex, right?
And definitely consistency, so like being true, I think, and honest to yourself and to each other, but especially to yourself, because if you think, okay, I'm going to man up and I'm going to get her, and I'm going to plan it all and I'm going to do it all right. But it's not really who you are. And then she realizes that down the line, it kind of like all falls apart anyway. So unless you're that kind of man, you might as well present yourself as, closer to who you really are.
Do the work
right, or become that kind of man. become more and more.
Yeah, whatever's blocking
that man.
Yeah, and it might be for another podcast, but I think also you got to communicate, talk to each other, ask for what you want, but don't demand. I think demanding is going to get you in the wrong place. But if you can ask for something, ask for what you need, communicate what your needs are, and everything is workable in a conversation. As long as there's respect present, There's intimacy, vulnerability, and there's a real intent on each side to really fulfill what the other one's looking for.
Exactly. And don't assume, right? Not to assume that like the next time will be easier or better. Right now I think it's very, it seems to people easy to just kind of like end something and try again with someone else. But really, if you haven't done the work in yourself, you're just going to repeat the same scenario.
Yes.
Right?
I was talking to a client this morning, and I was telling her what I heard from a gentleman sitting across from me. I think it was 20 years ago. He had married, he was on his third wife. And he said to me, if I would have known what I knew today, I wouldn't have gotten divorced in the first place.
Wow.
Because he kept making the same mistake. Because people notice, it's like, I picked the wrong partner. Yeah, that could be it. You didn't do your homework. But half the time is because you have your shortcomings that you're not aware of, or you don't want to be aware of, or you don't want to be responsible for. Life is not happening to you. What is it Oprah Winfrey says? It's happening for you. So be responsible.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Do what you got to do.
Right.
In order to have things work out.
Yeah.
But notice what you bring into the table.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think that's also like a nice kind of closing up, point. I mean, what I've done in this podcast is very much exactly advocate this, but from the sexual point of view. So you're the relationship experts, but that's what I say, speak and say what you need, be honest. It's verbatim what you say, but when it comes to sex, in order to have a happier sex life, right?
Yeah, because if not, man, there's nothing worse than bad sex. Somebody that you like and care for?
Yeah.
Jeez, this is horrible.
I know, right? But it's so hard for people to talk about it. I mean, one of the ironies of our lives is that it's easier to have sex than talk about sex. How crazy is that? Yeah? It's easier for people to take off all their clothes.
And like what we're going to put on, then
right. Yeah. Then just say like, I like it this way. I've never tried XYZ. Have you done this? Whatever. This is how my vagina works or whatever the particular, it's just so frightening to people.
Well, with your show, hopefully
it's just
people
words.
are opening up. People are opening up.
Yeah,
So thank you for inviting us.
No, thank you. This was a wonderful, enlightening conversation. Before we go, tell me a little bit about how people can get in touch with you. So, Michelle.
So we're having an event here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, May 17th. 18th and 19th. It's called The Irresistible Woman. It is just for women, and it's going to be about what we've talked about today. I mean, really, everything that we talked about today is going to be touched upon. It is for that powerful, strong woman who wants to experience as much success in her love life as she's experiencing in other areas of her life. And it's for both single women and also for women in relationships. So to be able to come to the event, you need to register, and you can go to www.irresistiblewomanlive.com. And for the listeners of your podcast, we'll do something special. If they use the code IWL 2019 altogether, that ticket is usually a $500 ticket. Right now, it's going up at the end of this week, but I think it's $147, and they can get it for $199. For $99,
oh, wow.
they'll be able to come to the event. They do have to use that code, though. Otherwise, we won't know that they're getting
the discount. Code again?
Yes, it's IWL 2019.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And
for me, the easiest way is Instagram.
Okay.
At
Arnie
Roza, ARNIE ROZA. Like me on Instagram, follow me, and then shoot me all a DM
or
either contact you directly or please give me some ideas of what to talk about and all that stuff, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, and if women want to connect with me, they can go on www.heartsdesireintl.com, and if they wait 2 seconds, a little box will pop up that says "Ready for Love," and you just put in your information.
And then you are.
You put in your information, and then it'll send me. You can pick a date and a time to talk that works for you, so that we can answer any questions that you have.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for all the wisdom, and thank you for taking the time to speak to everyone out there. I appreciate it, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Our pleasure, and thank you for having this kind of podcast. So needed in the world, so necessary. So thank you for facilitating such an important conversation. It's awesome.
And thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for trusting me as your sex whisperer here on Jolt Radio. And until we speak again next Friday, speak sex. Ciao. make love incessantly, I would be God.